Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I am Tarina Scott, Vice President of Theta Mu Omega Chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Thank you for joining us today. And if you joined us last week for our very informative discussion regarding the Tuskegee syndrome, you will know that this program will not disappoint. Our goal today is to provide some answers regarding those myths that are floating around the internet about COVID-19 and vaccines. Our chapter is dedicated to advancing knowledge and the understanding of COVID-19. We launched this webinar series to provide insight into the pandemic and shed light on uncertainties and facts. We have worked hard to ensure that you receive information from professionals, and today you will hear from leading experts that will address concerns and questions. If you have any questions or concerns, you are in the right place. And remember to sign on for the last installment of the webinar in this series on February 27th. Thank you to Dr. Samara Bowen and her committee for planning this series and for joining us today. Now I'm going to introduce Dakasha to you.
Hello. Ashley Furness is a graduate of Lindenwood University, where she obtained both her Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration and her MBA with an emphasis in accounting. She currently manages learning and development at Anheuser-Busch for the North American Zone. She is the co-chair of the Porter Brown Society, which is an employee resource group at Anheuser-Busch that focuses on equity and equality for Black employees. She serves on the boards of Major Decision Wrestling and One Family Church. Ashley is a very proud member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. She has devoted her time and energy to educating and providing resources for underprivileged youth through her work with the Furness Family Foundation. She was born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri. Her favorite pastimes include cooking, reading, and traveling with her husband and 4 children. Please welcome Ashley.
Thank you so very much for that welcome. Hello, everyone. I hope you all are having a wonderful evening. Well, all over the country here. It is my pleasure to welcome you to our second session of our COVID-19 Vaccine Awareness Series. Today, we'll be focused on some facts versus myths. I have the privilege of moderating this session with a group of small but mighty professionals. Before introductions, let me take a moment to give you a few facts about this panel. Between the 6 panelists, there are 16 degrees. All but 2 have attended HBCUs. They are all members of Greek organizations, a dynamic brother of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, and 5 beautiful ladies of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. They all truly embody Black excellence. But understand that they're just like each one of us. They're mothers and fathers, sisters and brothers. And just like all of us, they have been horribly affected by this virus. Over the last year, we've all gone on a journey that has been filled with so much information, some facts and some myths. This panel is here to clear up both. Now, just so you know, if you were here last week, we will address those remaining questions that we weren't able to answer then. In addition, thank you so much for submitting your questions at the time of registration. We'll address those as well. Before we start with the myths and the facts, let's gain some understanding about the vaccine and how it works. We've got Dr. Deborah Smart, that will be presenting on that for us. Dr. Deborah Smart, she attended the University of Michigan where she majored in biology. Dr. Smart received her medical degree from Michigan State University College of Medicine. She trained at Wayne State University in family medicine. Now, y'all, in addition to being a family medicine physician, Dr. Smart started her own consulting company and consulted with health, life, and disability companies. She serves on the Diversity Advisory Council of Chicago Medical School at Rosalind Franklin University School of Medicine and Science in North Chicago. She's a longtime member of National Medical Association. Dr. Smart is also a member of Hoffman Estates chapter of the Links Incorporated. He truly lives up to her name. Thank you so much, Dr. Smart, for being here today. Take it away.
Thank you, Ashley. Hello, everyone. Hello to my distinguished panel and my wonderful moderator. I would like to just give you an overview of the vaccine today. So if you could put up my slides. So today we're going to discuss some of the myths versus the facts. Next slide. First of all, what is a vaccine and how does it work? A vaccine is a substance that's used to stimulate the production of antibodies and produce immunity against disease. Vaccines work by helping your own body develop immunity to the virus by using memory cells. Those are cells within your own body that will remember the virus the next time you come into contact with it. This will usually take you a few weeks to produce these antibodies. And please understand something, and I know people are very concerned about the speed in which we developed the COVID-19 vaccines, but these vaccines were held to the same safety standards as all of the other vaccines that you're familiar with. Next slide. So how did we develop this mRNA vaccine? First of all, this vaccine has been in development since the SARS outbreak in 2003. So it has been in development for 17, 18 years. When we got the genetic code about the COVID-19 virus, they sent it to the scientists and they began designing the mRNA instructions for cells to build unique proteins against the spike protein. That's the little yellow, the red part that you saw at the first slide. Those are the spike proteins. Scientists around the world all started working together in their labs to come up with this vaccine. That is why this particular vaccine took us less than a year to develop. But the technology had been out there since 2003. Please understand that this vaccine does not contain any microchips or any of the things that you hear on the internet. What it does contain is mRNA, and there's a fat that envelops the mRNA because the mRNA is very fragile, salt, and a small amount of sugar. There's absolutely nothing else in this vaccine. What is exciting about mRNA vaccines are the technology may allow us to one day have one vaccine that will protect us against multiple diseases versus what we have to do now, and that is to go get shingles vaccine, flu vaccines, pneumonia vaccines. So this technology is extremely exciting in the scientific community. Next slide. The available vaccines that we have are the Pfizer vaccine and Moderna. Both are 2 shots. Pfizer's 21 days apart, Moderna's 28 days apart. And both of them have to be stored at very low temperatures. What's on the horizon, hopefully within the next 6 days, we will get the emergency use authorization for the J&J Hansen, and that will be 1 shot. Now, the Pfizer and Moderna's are mRNA vaccines. The Johnson & Johnson is not. The Johnson & Johnson is based on older technology, which we use the coronavirus that causes the common cold. And that particular vaccine will be stored in a regular refrigerator. So this is a game changer in us rolling out vaccines, because the J&J vaccine will be able to get to rural America and to many other institutions that don't have the ability to have these sub-zero freezers to keep the ones that you have to use for the other vaccines. Next slide. So just to give us a little hope, this is a list of currently the vaccines that are in the pipeline. And the two that I would like to point out to you are the Novavax, which just completed the number of participants that they need in their study this particular week. So hopefully we'll be hearing from them very soon. That would be a 2-shot vaccine also. And then the AstraZeneca, the Oxford AstraZeneca, is currently being used in Brazil and in the United Kingdom very successfully. They both have about over 70% efficacy, whereas the Pfizer and the Moderna are 94 to 95%, and the J&J is 72%. However, that we usually don't expect vaccines to give us these really high efficacy levels. The flu vaccine is usually somewhere between 40 to 60% effective. So to have a vaccine that's even 70% effective is absolutely phenomenal. There's also in Russia the Sputnik 5, which their data is showing is 85% efficacy. So that's very exciting. Next slide. So when you get the vaccine, and I repeat, when you get the vaccine, not if, when you get the vaccine, you can expect to have some minor side effects. The first shot, right now we just have the 2. Remember, we only have Pfizer and Moderna. So which one should you take? You should take whichever one is available when you make your appointment. I repeat, you cannot choose. They are both excellent. They're the same technology, and you take whichever one is available when you make your appointment. What do you expect? You expect maybe most people have slight pain, some mild swelling at the injection site on the first shot. It's after the second dose where we get more side effects, and that can lead to fatigue, fever and chills, headache, and more pain and swelling at the injection site. Usually your symptoms go away in 24 hours, at the latest 48. If you are having very worrisome side effects, you should definitely call your physician and be seen and treated. But these vaccines have been very safe, and we have not had reported any deaths from these vaccines. We've only had 6 cases of anaphylaxis, which is severe allergic reaction. No one died. Everyone was treated with epinephrine, and they were given a proper medication, and they survived. So these are very safe vaccines. Next slide. What I wanted to make sure that I covered was that young people have very robust, i.e. healthy immune systems. And they did report a higher incidence of side effects than older adults did, but treated with ibuprofen and Tylenol very successfully. Please remember that side effects mean that your immune system is working. It does not mean that the vaccine is not safe. So if you get side effects, that is absolutely, it's okay. You're not going to die from your side effects. As a matter of fact, your body is telling you, I'm making soldiers, I'm making antibodies to help fight this virus, and that is what we are looking for. How long the vaccines work, we have no idea. We're studying it, but we just do not know. We're hoping that maybe you may not need to get another shot. Maybe it may be like the flu vaccine where you have to get one every year. We just don't know. This is brand new. So we are collating the data, and we will then make a determination whether you need to get another booster after a year or so. The variants are of some concern. The two vaccines that we have available, the Pfizer and the Moderna, work very well against the UK variant. Our concern is the South African variant. That particular variant, the vaccines that we have, they're finding may not be as effective as what we would like, and they are studying, both Pfizer and Moderna are studying the South African variant to see if maybe you have to go in for a booster for that one, or if indeed you do develop enough antibodies so that you do not get sick from the South African variant. The best way for us to not have any more variants is for everybody to get vaccinated. Because if the virus isn't out there, it can't mutate. If you have antibodies, then, and the virus cannot continue to multiply, then it will not mutate. So getting this vaccine is extremely important. Next slide. So this is just a slide to reiterate, before you go to get your vaccine, of course you have to schedule an appointment and make sure that you are appropriate for you to get, and almost everybody falls in that category. Having autoimmune diseases, you still should get the vaccine. If you're allergic to fish, bees, or anything else, you still should get the vaccine. If you have other serious medical conditions, such as being under treatment for cancer where you are getting chemo radiation, you should talk to your physician before you try to get a vaccine to see when you should be able to get the vaccine. During the vaccine, they will give you a fact sheet, and they will also give you a vaccination record card. It will have your name on there and which vaccine you received. After you've gotten the vaccine, you should definitely schedule your second appointment. Expect some mild side effects. And then there is a program that the CDC has where if you have a smartphone, you can go to the CDC website and enroll in what's called the V-Safe. There, you can send them any side effects that you're having. And if they determine that the side effects that you're sending them are severe, you will actually get a call from the CDC. So that it is a monitoring system that you can easily enroll in if you have a smartphone. And please remember that you have to continue the protective measures. Next slide. And the reason why you have to continue the measures is because we die from this disease. And there is no vaccine that is 100%. I will repeat, there is nothing that man does that's 100%. 95% is wonderful, but you still have a 5% chance of getting this virus. And we don't know what the efficacy is for the variants. So you have to wear a mask. Even after getting the vaccine, you have to stay 6 feet apart. You should avoid crowds and poorly ventilated spaces, and you need to wash your hands for at least 20 seconds with soap and water. If soap and water is not available, then hand sanitizer. But soap and water trumps hand sanitizer every single time. If you look at this slide briefly, you will see that we die at about 2 times the rate of the majority, and we are hospitalized at 3 times the rate of the majority. So this is not anything really that we should take lightly, because we have a way of protecting ourselves, and you can protect your family and your friends. And we all want to be here in 2022. So I strongly recommend that you take this vaccine. Either one, doesn't matter which one it is. And I'd like to thank you very much for your attention. Thank you so much.
Dr. Smart, thank you so much for that honest and informational presentation. I know that the vaccine is the hot topic right now, and I think that cleared up quite a bit. I know I learned a lot. Before we go any further, I'll take this opportunity to introduce the rest of our dynamic panel today. First up, we've got Dr. Sante Thomas coming to us from El Paso, Texas. Dr. Sante Thomas, is the product of Caribbean immigrant parents, and she's the first in her family to complete college and earn a professional degree. Dr. Sante Thomas obtained both her bachelor's and master's degree in biology and biomedical sciences from Hampton University. She earned her medical degree from Howard University College of Medicine, and she completed her pediatric residency at Rutgers Robert Wood Johnson Hospital in Brunswick, New Jersey. Her pediatric emergency medicine fellowship was completed at SUNY Downstate in Brooklyn, New York. Dr. Sante Thomas previously served as Chief of Pediatric Emergency Services and the Medical Director of Pediatric ER at El Paso Children's Hospital. Now, if that job was anything close to the dynamics of that title, then that girl's got it going on. She currently works at Providence Children's Hospital in El Paso, Texas. Thank you so much, Dr. Sante Thomas, for being here this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so next we've got Dr. Mia Sanders from LA, California. She received her undergraduate degree from Stanford University, attended medical school at Loyola University, and she completed her training at Morehouse School of Medicine. Dr. Sanders spent her high school summers working at her father's office. While there, she enjoyed listening to patients, learning about their stories, and tackling their health concerns. These experiences were the seeds of her love for medicine. Now, she's able to be involved in the amazing journeys of so many women's lives. As a board-certified OBGYN, Dr. Sanders aspires to bring a spirit of trust, detail, and kindness to each story. With a passion like that, no wonder she's here today to give us these facts. Thank you so much, Dr. Sanders, for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we'll move right on to Dr. Valencia Walker, who currently lives in Ohio. Dr. Walker graduated from Florida A&M University. She received her medical degree from Emory University School of Medicine. Her pediatrics residency was completed at UT Memphis, and her neonatology fellowship was completed at Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center. Now, for those who don't know, because I didn't, a neonatologist is a doctor for babies younger than 4 weeks. Dr. Walker also obtained her MPH in health policy from Harvard H.T. Chan School of Public Health. He currently serves as Associate Chief Diversity and Health Equity Officer at Nationwide Children's Hospital. Dr. Walker chairs the California Medical Association Council. She has a strong presence in many organizations, including American Academy of Pediatrics. She's previously served as the president of Association of Black Women Physicians. Everyone, please join me in welcoming Dr. Walker.
Good morning or good evening. I was on call last night, so you'll have to forgive me for running my days and nights together.
That's okay. We'll take it easy on you. Don't you worry. All right, next we have Dr. Celeste Williams from Detroit, Michigan. Dr. Williams obtained her undergraduate degree from the University of Iowa. She attended Chicago Medical School, where she received her medical degree. She trained in internal medicine at Loyola University in Chicago. Dr. Williams completed her cardiology fellowship at Henry Ford Hospital. She also completed her heart failure cardiac transplant fellowship at Cleveland Clinic. Dr. Williams is an associate professor of medicine and is the director of quality at the Heart and Vascular Institute at Henry Ford Hospital in Detroit, Michigan. She also serves as the medical director of the cardiac transplantation program. This is one hard-working sister. Dr. Williams has served on numerous national committees, including the American College of Cardiology. Now, in 2020, she was named top doc in Michigan by Detroit Hour magazine and in 2017 was named Woman of Excellence by the Michigan Chronicle. We are so fortunate to have all of that excellence here with us today. Thank you so much, Dr. Williams, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right, last but certainly not least, we've got our brother on board, Dr. Matt Wooten. Dr. Wooten obtained his undergraduate degree from South Carolina State University, his medical degree from Ohio University Heritage College of Medicine. After graduating from medical school, he completed a residency in internal medicine at Mount Carmel Health Systems in Columbus, Ohio, before coming to Greenville for his fellowship. Dr. Wooten is an internal medicine and infectious disease physician, currently completing training in critical care medicine at the East Carolina University Brody School of Medicine in Greenville, North Carolina. Not only is he an active member of Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, but he also headed the National Project Alpha Initiative, which is a mentorship program for Black high school students. He's also a member of the National Medical Association. All right, that is such an impressive and amazing group that we have here today. I'm ready to jump on in. What about you all? Okay.
Right. Ready to go.
Yes. So before we get started, let me explain exactly how this will work. I'll read a statement, a poll question will pop up on your screen, and you'll simply select the select the option on whether you think the statement that I read is a fact or myth. Once we get your results in, we'll have one of our panelists fill us on the truth. So let's get started. All right, if we could get the slide deck pulled up with the facts and the myths. All right, bear with us while we're having just a few technical issues. We'll get this slide deck pulled right up. While we've got a little downtime, let me take this time to let you guys know about evaluations. So in the chat, you'll see multiple times during the event, there'll be an evaluation link that will be placed right in there. Please make sure you're filling out this evaluation. It takes less than 30 seconds to fill out. And if you fill it out, your name will be entered in our Spin the Wheel contest for a prize. Winners will be selected after the upcoming Q&A portion. All right, panel, audience, everyone ready? Let's go to our first statement here. All right, so the first statement that we've got is COVID-19 is no worse than the flu. We're gonna start with the poll that'll pop up. All right, so you guys have about 10 seconds to answer that first one. Again, it's COVID-19 is no worse than the flu. And once we get those results in, I'm gonna bounce this over to Dr. Walker to answer. This will be a very interesting one. I know that some of the symptoms kind of mirror each other. All right, Dr. Walker, I'll let you go ahead and get started and then we'll get those poll results on the back end.
Okay, no problem. I'm just putting a quick answer in for one of the questions that was raised, trying to help us keep up. So, for everyone who's here today, have you heard of the Black Panther Party? Okay. Have you heard of Chairman Fred Hampton? Right? Have you heard of this new movie called Judas and the Black Messiah. How many people have actually seen it yet, though? Not bad. Well, I'm going to give you an analogy, and hopefully this analogy will also help you realize you should go see that movie. Think of Chairman Fred as our DNA, and think of COVID-19 as Bill O'Neill, who is the member of the Black Panther Party that we think pretty much kind of, as we would say, sold out Chairman Fred. Think of the flu as somebody who kind of wants to hang with the Black Panther Party and disrupt things, but they kind of aren't as effective because they can't get as close to Chairman Fred. So when we think about the flu and COVID-19, the flu is good. It can get close, but it can't really get to your DNA. It can't really get in your cells. It can be somewhat effective, and it can definitely make you sick, but it's not as good as COVID-19 is. COVID-19 can get there and pretend like it's your friend until you've got the FBI and the police and everything coming in and raiding you, and you're like, what did I do? How did you get here? I didn't invite you. So when we talk about COVID-19 being more deadly than the flu, it's because, yes, they're both, viruses, but the way they work is different. And COVID-19 is much more effective at getting close to you and making you sick and causing all types of problems.
That makes sense. So I have one follow-up question, Dr. Walker. Do more people die from flu or COVID-19 every year?
Well, COVID-19 is new for us, and we know that we have over 500,000 people dead. And every year we talk about the flu. And if we have a really bad year where doctors are stressed out, we're talking about 60 to 80,000 people dead. Many of you may not remember a year ago, but those were the original projections for COVID. And we were all like, oh my God, that's horrible. So the fact that we've blown past that with over 500,000 people dead, it speaks to how much bigger of a problem COVID-19 has been for us.
Very interesting, very interesting. All right, we'll move on to the next question, our next statement here.
Can I just interject for 1 second?
Yes,
on the
Dr.
COVID-19 versus the flu. It was just announced yesterday that COVID-19 has decreased the Black population's life expectancy by 3 years. It is also now the third leading cause of death in this country, followed by heart disease number 1, cancer number 2, COVID-19 number 3.
Wow.
So,
wow. Those are very sobering facts.
Yes.
Okay, well, I'm sure we'll get more into that. We can go ahead and move on to the second slide, please. All right, so for the next one, I don't need the vaccine if I've already had COVID-19. Now, this is a very interesting one that I'm sure lots of folks are interested in hearing, because we know in the country currently over 28 million people have been diagnosed alone with COVID-19. Dr. Wooten, I'm going to push this question off for you. Is this fact or myth?
Okay, I guess, okay, so I see, I was waiting for the whole poll to come up, but I guess people have already answered it. Okay, so yeah, this is definitely not true. So the thing is with the coronavirus, you have to think pretty much in two structures. So you have the outer layer and then you have the spike proteins. So the thing is, even if you naturally acquire COVID, you may only form antibodies against that outer capsid or the outer layer, but you may not actually develop antibodies to the spike protein, which we know is the most deadly, I guess, the factor that causes the most, like I said, fatal effects from it. So like I said, even if you've had COVID, you should definitely go get the vaccine.
So if I've had COVID already, how long does the immunity last for me naturally getting it?
So that we don't know, right? Like I said, this is very new, and I have no problem saying, we don't really know. some of the literature I've read, particularly out of New England Journal of Medicine, people who've naturally acquired COVID, a lot of times their antibodies only lasted for 3 months. So that's kind of another reason why you should get it. Like I said, the vaccine, I see Samara's put in a group, maybe 2.7 years. Okay. So, we don't know. And the other kind of question I have is, is this something we're going to have to get every year, just like the flu vaccine? So, but kind of to say all this, even if you've gotten COVID, and, you should still get the vaccine.
So let me ask one follow-up question from that. If we know that acquiring COVID naturally gives you about 2.7 years of antibodies, how long will it protect? How long would the vaccine protect you? Sorry. Not sure yet. All right.
We'll figure out.
Science.
Yep.
Thank you so much for that. All right, we'll move on to the next slide, please. So our next myth or fact will be for Dr. Santee Thomas. Now, can children get COVID-19 and can they spread it? So as a mother of 4, this one really piques my interest. What do you think here? Is this fact or myth?
So this is, in fact, a fact, right? So just like any other communicable disease, like the flu or your common cold, children as well as adults can get COVID-19 and they can spread it. Now, we don't really have any true data to give us the numbers for transmissibility, which means the ability for a child to transmit COVID to another child or to another person. But we do know that they can get it, they have gotten it, and they have given it to either siblings or others they've been in contact with. Since the beginning of the pandemic, since most of our children have been at home, most of their exposures have actually been from their adults that are around them that go out of the house for either being essential workers or going to get essential items for the home, such as groceries, food, and such.
If the virus has proven to be pretty bad with children as well, when do we think that children will be able to get vaccinated?
So the hope is by the end of this year. Currently, they have extended both in the Moderna and Pfizer to younger children. I believe Pfizer is 12, and I want to say Moderna is 13, but I don't want to misspeak. But by the end of March and early April, they will be starting phase 2 and 3 trials for pediatric patients. There are 25 identified sites here in the United States, and surprisingly in El Paso, Texas, we have one of the clinics that will be participating in that trial. And they will be in 3 phases, 6 to 12 years of age, 2 to 6 years of age, and 6 months to 2 years of age. Because of the different sizes of our pediatric population in comparison to adults, they're also going to be looking at different fraction doses of the actual vaccine. So full doses versus half doses versus quarter doses. But all of that science is still in the works, but we're looking to go into trials by late March, early April.
So breaking up childhood ages in groups like that, is that common when they're studying other vaccines?
Absolutely, and that is also part of why children from the age of 2 months get serial doses of vaccination. So that's why, if you remember, if you have children, typically they get their first shot in the hospital for hepatitis B and they get their vitamin K, but at 2 months is kind of when they start their series of vaccinations.
Got it. Well, thank you very much for that. All right, we'll move on to our next statement. This is a very interesting one. So women who are pregnant or breastfeeding should not take the vaccine. So I know that they have not done any studies on this yet, but I did read that several of the women that participated in the studies became pregnant during their trial. This one is going to go to Dr. Sanders. Is this a myth or a fact?
So this is definitely a myth. The American College of OBGYN, the CDC, the Women's Health Organization, and many health providers, including myself, are supporting pregnant women and women who are breastfeeding to take the vaccine due to the facts that we know that COVID affect pregnant women. So those facts are: 1, we know that pregnancy is a risk factor for severe illness and maternal mortality. pregnant women are more likely to need ICU care, need a ventilator, or even die from the illness. It's interesting, this week, the American Journal of OBGYN actually published a study from the Washington state stating that pregnant women were infected with COVID-19 at 70% higher rate, with a greater proportion of those being non-white. Hispanic, American Indian, Native Americans, and Pacific Islanders were at 2 to 4 times risk of COVID-19.
Wow.
We also know that the facts are that pregnant women who have health conditions like obesity and diabetes are at a higher risk of severe illness. The third fact is that pregnant women who are of African descent or are Hispanic have a higher rate of illness and death from COVID-19 due to social health and economic inequities. Due to these facts, we are supporting pregnant women to get the vaccination. In addition, because of the Washington study, now many states are pushing for their pregnant patients to get access to the vaccination. Now, your question may be, is it safe? Pregnant women were not part of the initial COVID vaccination trials. However, the scientists, based on their knowledge and animal studies, believe that the vaccination is safe. And this is particularly true for the Pfizer and Moderna vaccinations, which use the mRNA technology. And I'm excited about this week, the Pfizer launched a trial of 4,000 pregnant women to confirm the safety of the vaccination. So once again, it is advised that pregnant women, and those breastfeeding, those considering pregnancy should obtain the Pfizer and Moderna vaccinations, but always discuss the vaccination with their health provider and their concerns.
All right. So another follow-up question is, if the outcome of pregnant women catching COVID is so bad, what happens to their babies? In addition to COVID being transferred possibly to the babies, do those babies also receive some type of benefits from the mom being vaccinated as well?
So you've asked several questions, basically. One, is there transmission from the pregnant mother to the fetus? So there have been some studies, and it does occur, but it's very rare. And if those babies do have COVID, then their symptoms are very mild. And you usually don't require a long-term stay in the neonatology ICU. The second part of your question was with regards to, does the vaccine, if a pregnant mother is getting the vaccine, can that potentially protect the fetus and the newborn? So it is thought that it does, but there haven't been enough studies, enough cases for us to really understand that. But hopefully with the new trial that Pfizer is doing, and hopefully with the vaccination going out to our women that are on the front lines who are pregnant and breastfeeding, we will get more of that information.
That makes sense. I guess when it comes to vaccines and COVID-19, we're still pretty early in the game. So there's a lot that needs to be done there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we can go on to the next slide, please. Okay, so this one I'm going to toss to Dr. Williams. Fact or myth? COVID-19 can cause permanent or long-term damage to my heart and lungs.
Thank you, Ashley. Okay, so COVID-19 has a very complex relationship with heart disease. And we found that most patients, that develop COVID-19, they're not going to have symptoms. They're going to be fine. But the patients who are hospitalized that require ICU care, there's more chances that they're going to have long-term effects. And some of the effects that we actually see, they have what we call blood clots, microemboli that occur. And it can occur in the coronary arteries, resulting in a heart attack. It can occur in the lungs, resulting in a pulmonary emboli, which could be catastrophic and lead to death. So this is a very kind of complex question. We know that patients who are elderly and who have comorbid conditions, meaning maybe have hypertension or diabetes or being obese, they're more likely to have long-term effects from COVID. And we've seen in different studies that if the heart is abnormal on imaging, So a person with high blood pressure typically will have a thick heart, and that's considered abnormal. Those patients are more likely to develop long-term effects from COVID. And, we need longitudinal studies to see what type of effects we will see. But we are definitely concerned that, in the more severe cases or people who've already had comorbid conditions, yes, the chances of having long-term damage is very possible.
Wow. So I've heard this term long hauler, right? And referencing symptoms that people are having. Can you explain to us exactly what that is?
So that has been a sequel of, people having just very diverse, it could be anything. We have people who come in that, have had COVID, have recovered, but they're still having chest pain. And when we do imaging studies, we do a cath, nothing, we don't see anything. Or people who are having neurological problems, with their arms and their hands. We have people who have continued shortness of breath. But we have seen, with imaging that, they are having some damage to their lung and to their heart. We've seen cases of myocarditis, which is an inflammation of the heart that has occurred, but it could be anything. So the thing is, just because you're asymptomatic, you don't have symptoms doesn't mean you're not at risk for having long-term effects from COVID. And that's really kind of the point. You don't have to be really, really sick to have it. Most likely the people who are sick will get long-term effects, but it can be people without symptoms also.
You guys are really making a case for this vaccine. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. Thank you so much, Dr. Williams. All right, myth or fact? If I take my vitamins, I will not get the virus. Dr. Smart, I'm gonna put this one off on you.
Wouldn't that be fabulous? If we could just go to Walgreens and get some vitamin C, zinc, and chromium, and we would not get the virus. The studies just came out this week from the Journal of American Medical Association that states that this is not the case. Vitamin C, D, zinc, chromium, melatonin, none of them will stop you from getting the virus. They tried high dose vitamin D for very severe hospitalized patients who had COVID because they were measuring their vitamin levels and they found that they had very low vitamin D levels. And they thought maybe that would be helpful, but it was not. It did not decrease their hospitalization or the severity of the disease. So unfortunately, no, you need a vaccine.
All right, so that flat tummy tea I bought from Instagram is not gonna help at all. Protects me, huh?
Let me know if flat tummy anything works, okay?
All right, we'll go ahead and go to the next slide. I think we've hit that one right off. All right, so COVID-19 vaccine was developed with or contains some controversial substances. Now, I know that Dr. Smart recently just talked about the composition of the vaccine in her presentation, but let's go a little bit deeper into this one. Dr. Walker, can you help us out here? Fact or myth? Dr. Walker, if you're
I saw it. I realized it. I'm on mute. Okay. So I was saying that Dr. Smart did do a nice job of telling us a little bit about this. Now, you may want to think to yourselves, hold on. We know there are 2 vaccines that are approved, and there are a couple more that are coming. Each of the vaccines may have slightly different ingredients, but just as Dr. Smart was saying, like you need some fat, you need some sugar. There's propylene ethyl glycol, propylene glycol that's in a couple, but you may hear that word and even hear how I struggle to say that word, but then you have to remember that's also in like your fast food, it's in your shampoos, it's in your toothpaste. So some of these ingredients are the ingredients that we're ingesting every day. I mean, because I really hope you're brushing your teeth every day, because that's a whole separate webinar, right? And so, honing into, but there's no thimerosal. I think I've seen things on the internet about this idea of luciferase. Luciferase is something that is naturally occurring, and it's not in the vaccine, but it can be used in kind of helping scientists and researchers when they're doing their research in the lab, but it's not what goes into the vaccine. Part of the reason why the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccines have to be kept so cold is because they didn't even want to put any preservatives into it at all. So this is like, okay, we got to keep it cold, because as soon as it's like ready to go, it needs to go into your body because it's not stable, because we didn't even put any extra stuff in it to kind of help it like persist or things like that. So in some ways, based on a lot of the advocacy that people have done over the years about making sure we don't have unnecessary ingredients in our vaccines, they're not in the Moderna and the Pfizer. And even with some of the ones that are coming out that are slightly different, they still don't have a lot of these ingredients that people have raised concerns about.
Well, Dr. Walker, I am going to go way left field and ask what everyone's thinking.
Okay.
So is there any pork or fecal matter? Or
no. So one of the things, particularly for people who are of Muslim faith, gelatin is often made from the hooves of pigs, pork. And so that's considered a pork product they shouldn't consume. And so gelatin, if you look again in a lot of the foods or things like that you eat, particularly like your fast foods, your frozen foods, your prepackaged dinners that you may pick up like, oh my gosh, I don't have a lot of time, I can just pop this in the microwave. Or when you buy that deli sandwich that's prepackaged in the plastic at the gas station, all those types of foods contain all these extra things like gelatin. But in the case of the vaccines, they do not contain that. So there are no pork products in them.
All right, thank you very much for that. We'll move on to the next slide, please. Dr. Sanders, this one is for you. The vaccine causes infertility in women, fact or myth?
So once again, this is a myth. There have been no clinical studies showing that it in COVID-19 or the vaccination causes infertility. There was a study done in Canada, or I should say an article in Canada that was just written that looked into this, and they did not see that there was any correlation between at least COVID and infertility. But they did cite that there needed to be more information. I think COVID is just a little bit too new for us to really know. However, I would say for my experience being an OBGYN, the pregnancy rate has not dropped in my practice as of right now.
Well, that's good for business, huh? All right, we'll go ahead and move on to the next slide. Thank you. Myth or fact, is it safe to take the vaccine if you have food allergies? Dr. Santi Thomas, could you answer this for us?
Absolutely. In fact, it is safe for you to take the vaccine if you have food allergies and even severe allergies requiring an EpiPen. The rate at which patients were getting anaphylaxis were extremely low in both the Pfizer and Moderna trials. So in fact, if you get the Pfizer or Moderna first dose vaccination and experience any type of allergy, even as severe as anaphylaxis, you are encouraged strongly to discuss it with your physician for the second dose, actually in conjunction with an allergist. We know how to treat anaphylaxis. We still do not know how to treat COVID-19.
That makes sense. Thank you for that insight there. We can go to the next slide, please. All right, number 10, COVID-19 disproportionately affects African Americans. Recent study shows the life expectancy of Blacks decreased by 2.7 years. So this one has actually already been addressed. But Dr. Williams, is there anything else you would like to add here?
Yeah, so that study also showed that the life expectancy of non-whites, well, whites, has gone down by 1 year. What's important to remember is that whites are living about average age of 77.8 years and Blacks are 72 years of age. But we have to remember that health disparities was here before COVID. And I think this is an extremely important point that we all have to remember. Any disease, whether it's heart disease, cancer, having a baby, the mortality or the death rate in Blacks has been higher historically. So COVID is not going to be any different. So we have to do things to mitigate or lessen our risk. So we know that, for instance, heart disease and COVID, they run hand in hand. If you have conditions that increase your risk for COVID, you need to focus on your preventative. This is not the time to say, oh, I'm gonna work on my hypertension. No, take your hypertension meds. I'm gonna work on my weight. I'm gonna exercise. We have to do these things because we have to learn how to mitigate risk. So you can decrease your risk by social distancing, by wearing your mask. You can also decrease your risk by treating your risk factors for heart disease during this time, and all time. We don't want to die of heart disease when it's a lot of times preventable. Another thing is the delay in care. So what I found is that we are so scared about COVID that we don't go to the hospital. And we know this pandemic has been going on for more than a year. So people are missing their colonoscopies, they're missing their mammograms, they're missing their pap smears, they're missing all the preventative things that we really need. So by the time they get there, they're going to have a cancer that's way out of control. So I think this is multifactorial, is that yes, we're dying more of COVID. Yes, we're dying more of heart attacks. I mean, there's a lot of studies showing that there's more out of hospital arrests, and Black people are more likely to have that out of hospital arrest. So we have to just think, is COVID, is our other, comorbid conditions, and it's our adversity for care because we're so scared. So I think it's like a combination of everything. So we gotta mitigate our risk though.
Yeah, thank you for that hard truth. I think it's important for us to understand what we're doing to contribute to these high numbers that we're seeing that disproportionately affect us. Thank you. Thank you. All right, on to the next slide, please. Okay, the vaccine causes Bell's palsy. Okay, so I'm going to push this one to Dr. Smart, but could you please first explain what that condition is to us?
No, just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I said, please.
Please forgive me. Bell's palsy is a condition we think that's caused by a virus where people have a drooping of the side of their face and maybe their eyelid. But the vaccine, there were 4 cases that were reported so far of Bell's palsy after the recipients received the vaccine. So they studied it to see if this was a side effect of the vaccine. And they found that this incidence was the same as it would be in the general population. They did not correlate the vaccine to getting the Bell's palsy. What you have to understand, okay, they've had 4 cases. How many doses of vaccine have we had? 15 million people have gotten 2 doses. There have been 52 million people as of today that have received either 1 or 2 doses of this vaccine, and you have 4 cases. That is just a very minute amount. And so I would not be concerned about that. But we have seen Bell's palsy in vaccines, before, because we believe that it's caused by, in viruses, because we believe it's caused by a virus, but we're not really sure.
Thank you for clearing that up. All right, on to the next fact or myth. You can't get the virus twice. Dr. Wooten, I'm going to push this one off for you.
Okay, so here's the thing with coronavirus. We're always exposed to coronavirus, so you could definitely get this more than twice. You could probably get it 100 times and so forth. What we need to understand is that coronavirus, so it's a very common virus we're exposed to every winter. And there's several different strains of coronavirus. Now, not like this COVID-2, which is a novel coronavirus because it causes has the potential to cause fatal effects on the body. So yes, you can get more than twice, which is important that one, yes, we get vaccinated, but also want to hit to another point too, is there's an importance of building up your own immunity. So I know we talked about the vitamin D and zinc and how if you take those, you won't get COVID. Well, that's not true, obviously, but in terms of vitamins, in terms of in terms of what you eat. So I think that's a very painful conversation that we have to have in the Black community, particularly going back to what Dr. Williams said, which I mean, oh my goodness, if I could turn my mic on during that time and clap, I mean, that was such a round of applause for me, just because that's a harsh conversation that we need to have in our community where, all right, we're disproportionately affected, right? Well, COVID isn't the only thing that we're disproportionately affected of, high blood pressure, diabetes, renal failure, strokes, you could just name it. So like the question I want everybody to kind of think about, even now when we leave here from the day is like, what are we going to do about it? And this conversation I've had with even some of my, doctor friends and even some other, friends who aren't doctors is, we need to evaluate what we're eating, our nutrition. A lot of things that we're eating, we always like to say, oh, well, we get this because we're genetically predisposed. Well, a lot of genetics haven't really been passed down. It's been bad eating habits that have been passed down, which puts us at risk for a lot of these illnesses that we've discussed. And so we really have to keep that in mind and do what we need to do on our end to at least make sure that we are as healthy as possible, make sure our immune systems are naturally strong as possible, so that when we're faced with COVID-19 and I'm gonna tell you what, these viruses out here all the time. Actually, SARS-CoV-2, which is COVID-19, was actually discussed in a microbiology journal in China like 2 years ago. All right, these viruses are out here all the time. Okay, this will not be the last virus. I'm not here to scare everybody, but this is just straight facts. Like these viruses are out here all the time. So the thing is that, whether it's COVID-19 or COVID-30, COVID-40, whatever it is, that we are doing on our end, what we're supposed to do in terms of a health and building our own natural immunity to, make sure, we don't succumb to this disease.
Thank you very much for that. Again, I think the focus on what we can do as folks and individuals to prevent some of these hard truths that we're facing right now is very important. Thank you for your honesty. We'll move on to the next, please. All right, the vaccine is killing people. Myth or facts? We're gonna ask Dr. Walker about this one.
Hi, actually, I think this has also come up in the chat and in our Q&A, and there is a couple of websites out there. There's one in particular that a couple of people have mentioned that are posting like, these are the deaths that are happening as relationship to the vaccine. So in the trials, as mentioned, we looked at thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people. In reality, we studied this vaccine in many more thousands of people than earlier trials of vaccines and other medications. So we have a lot of data that we wouldn't normally have to share with you, and we did not see an increase of death. That being said, you should ask these questions and be concerned once a large group of people start getting the vaccines. Regardless of what happens, some things, let me say that differently. Regardless of getting the vaccine, some things are going to happen, even if you did or if you didn't. And based on the information we have so far, when it comes to the vaccines that we have data on, right? Because remember, there are more vaccines coming. They don't seem to be causing death. Now, can someone get a dose of the vaccine and then they may die a week or two later? That may have happened even if they hadn't. And I know you're probably thinking like, is she just saying that to try to like justify it or things like that? But unfortunately, that's a reality that we live with. And if I can provide a personal anecdote, my mother is 82 years old. She just received her second dose of the vaccine a couple of days ago. Being her daughter, I was blowing up her phone like every 2 hours, like, are you okay? How do you feel? What's wrong? I'm human. I have the same worries and things that you do. She's doing fine. She's doing great. She thinks I'm worrying excessively. She didn't even have like significant like fever chills or things like that. I am incredibly blessed because at 82, my mother is healthy. But it didn't take away my own worry. But where we have anxiety and where we have data, knowing the data didn't make my anxiety go away, but at least I can look at that data and say, let me put this in context. So I hope that kind of helps answer your question.
It sure does. It sure does. We've gotten some really thorough answers here. So we are going to take one more myth or fact before we bounce over to our Q&A session. All right. So for the final one, you can go to the next slide, please. Myth or fact? If you lose your sense of taste or smell, it will not return. Dr. Sanders?
So as we know, smell loss and taste are common symptoms of COVID-19. And in a study from Iran, it was noted that at least about 96% of people who had COVID-19 had some dysfunction of their smell, and 18% actually had total loss of smell. The literature now shows that recovery can be from days to months. And in one study, it took about 4 weeks for 72% of patients to have complete recovery, and about 84% showed improvement. So, but there are also those extremes where people have not recovered their sense of smell back or their taste. But those are very rare cases. Most people will recover their sense of taste and smell.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, this has been truly insightful. I want to thank each one of you panelists for all of the information you've given here. Don't worry, you're not out of the clear yet. We're just going to switch modes a little bit. Before we switch over to the Q&A portion, I want to remind everyone one more time, be sure to fill those evaluations out. They're over in the chat off to the right. Click any of those hyperlinks. It takes less than 30 seconds. Your name will be entered into our Spin the Wheel contest. We'll be handing out Amazon gift cards. Those gift cards will be in your email, so don't forget to check your spam. All right, so now we're gonna bounce over to some of the awesome questions that you all have been asking in the chat. Just a moment to get back here. All right. For this portion, I will just ask that our panelists, I'll ask that our panelists just jump in and answer as they see fit. I do apologize with the messages coming in. It's just popping me off here. All right. Okay, so for the first question that we have, I'm having technical difficulties, I do apologize. All right. So we've got someone that said they're interested in learning more about its safety and about the effectiveness against the COVID-19 strand from South Africa. So we've spoken several times about these different strands. Would anyone like to talk specifically on how the the vaccine works with the different strands that we've all heard about?
Well, I'll start. And of course, my esteemed colleagues can jump right in here. The UK variant is, we believe, that will be the dominant variant in this country by the end of March. The vaccines that we have so far have shown to be very effective against fighting the UK variant. So that's good news, because that means you get vaccinated and you're still covered. the South African variant is of concern. We're not seeing the same effectiveness with the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines with the South African variant as we have with the UK variant. I know that people saw in the news that AstraZeneca sent 1 million doses to South Africa for vaccination, and they told them they returned them because they were not effective against the South African variant. So they're working on that though. And because of this technology of mRNA vaccines, they believe that they can come up, if necessary, with a different vaccine or just a booster for the South African. It is not that prevalent currently here in this country, so it's not as of grave concern as it is in other parts of the world, but it is of concern because we have seen it in this country.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope that answers that person's question. We have another one. What laboratory tests are being used to document post-vaccination immunity? None.
There's none being used
Is there a reason for that?
because we don't know if antibodies mean immunity.
Got it.
Yeah.
So
And something else about that too. So like, we don't know if there's any lab tests out now that actually say detect antibodies to that spike protein. So the thing is that there's people that are like, been in hospital and like, for example, so in the ICU, they've, we test them for the antibodies, and the IgG, which is the antibody that pops up, will be positive. But like I said, is that the antibody to the outer layer of the virus, which I was talking about earlier, or is it the protein? Is it the antibody to that spike protein? And I think there's some controversy, some questions whether like that antibody that say like after the vaccine, right, it should be against that spike protein. Are there like has anybody like created an antibody, I guess, reagent or whatever else that can detect the antibody to the spike protein yet? We don't know. So, we'll just have to see.
All right. So another question. Will there be a different vaccine for children who have allergies and use an EpiPen for emergencies?
No. Those of you, adults and children who have food allergies or have anaphylaxis, which is a severe allergy to either a food or a medication, can still get the vaccine. Even after getting their first dose of the vaccine, if they have a mild reaction, they're still pushed to get the second form. If they have anaphylaxis, which is a severe form of an allergy to that first dose, prior to getting their second dose, they're going to need to discuss with their physician in conjunction with an allergist to make sure that they're able to have their anaphylaxis, if they get that from the second dose, managed.
Understood. Okay, another one. So this goes into something we talked about earlier, but are there best practice resources for Black people for protecting their health, which differs from other racial groups or ethnic groups? Can reliable sources be provided?
can I answer this one?
Absolutely.
Okay. So, the clinical trials that we have, with pertaining to our health, we're not large. We're not represented with clinical trials. So a lot of the data we have is extrapolated from white participants. So, but we do have data on basic things on how to protect like your cardiac health. It doesn't matter if you're white or Black or Hispanic. We need to control diabetes, control the blood pressure, control the cholesterol, exercise, get in the right weight range. And those are just basic cardiac risk factors for having bad events. And we know that heart disease is the #1 killer in America and has been for years. So if we're talking about cardiovascular disease, we have to take the same data that we have and apply it to our lives.
All right. Another question. How long after recovering from COVID should someone wait to get the vaccine?
From what I've heard, it's been about 90 days. Is for what I've heard. Some correct me. I feel like between like 30 and 90 days. It's kind of what I've been hearing. 90. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's all. That's all. It's true. Yeah. It was 90 days.
They
That's
said
what
like
I've been
about
hearing.
3 months. Yeah.
3 months,
About
yeah.
3 months.
So, yep.
You know, I don't think there's a consensus about
No,
that
there
though,
is.
across
Yeah,
the country.
yeah.
There
There's not a
is.
That's like the number.
consensus.
That's kind of what I've been
It
hearing.
isn't.
Yeah.
The CDC kind of says there isn't, but they're
No.
they have to throw something out there.
Yeah. So if you hear other numbers, you can't,
Can't
people
say
may
it's
hear other
not true.
things. Right.
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 Well, that question got the panel up.
There's
ahead,
one more
Dr.
thing. There's one more thing I want to say. Okay, so back to the other question, whether there's like actual antibody tests to identify the spike protein. So one of my colleagues, Dr. Eric Bonner, he mentioned that actually, at least our hospital system, there are actually spike antibody tests to evaluate immunity. The thing is, it's qualitative, which means it will only tell you whether it's there or not. So the other thing that we have to guess that still is unknown is the actual titer. So you can have the antibody, but is it enough? So the actual titer is kind of going to be the next topic. So that we don't know yet. So I just wanted to add that in.
All right. I see another very interesting question. Should you wait to get the second vaccine if you've already contracted COVID-19 after your first vaccine?
I'm gonna answer that one. Here's a disclaimer. That's my wife that asked that question. She's one of y'all sorors that I'm talking about. All right, I had to say that. So here's the thing, right? There was also, I think this is kind of like another myth to be just like, okay, can you get COVID from the vaccine? All right, no, you can't. All right, but what happens is there's a lot of people that have like they've gotten the vaccine, but actually tested positive for the vaccine like around the same time. That actually happened to one of my friends. So one of my friends actually, he's an orthopedic surgeon around here, and he's actually the sports med doc for ECU. So he gets tested every week because he's working with the athletes. And so he decided to go get the vaccine. So he actually, he gets tested every Monday, and he's been tested negative, so no big deal. And then he's like, okay, I'm gonna get the vaccine. And then afterwards, he had a severe allergic reaction. Well, we're like, well, it's to do the vaccine. I really don't think so, because he actually happened to incidentally test positive for COVID. Now, he was all right. He just had a rash, it went away, no big deal. But that's kind of my question, is that, and particularly when people say, oh, well, so-and-so had this reaction, whether it was the Bell's palsy or you can think of something else to the vaccine. I was like, well, remember, a lot of people aren't actually getting tested for COVID, number one, because if you're not having any symptoms, right, why would you go get tested? All right, so sometimes a lot of people are just going to go get the vaccine. But some of those people might actually, if you were to test them, may actually have COVID. So, what we kind of learned about that is like, okay, well, you actually had COVID and you got the vaccine, but then you have a reaction. They're like, oh, well, it's the vaccine. Well, not necessarily. Maybe you testing positive for COVID and having a vaccine maybe wasn't a good combination. Now, that's going to open up another door and say, well, should you get tested for COVID before you get the vaccine? Because I haven't heard anything about that yet. So I don't know. Me and my wife got tested twice. We're fine now. I didn't get tested right before I got the vaccine. I got tested like 7 months ago, but I got my 2 doses and I was fine. So.
All right. Well, that clears that up.
Back to that discussion about Bell's palsy. Remember that we're comparing the vaccine to the COVID-19 virus, but also to other viruses. So for people who don't know, Bell's palsy can also be a side effect of getting a viral infection. And we often do see it with the flu. I remember I was in class a couple of years ago, seeing my classmate every day. Then one day she comes in, her face is drooping. And you know how you try not to stare, but you're staring because, we're all doctors. So we're like, is she having a stroke? Should we do something? And of course, she wasn't a doctor, but she realized, and she was like, yeah, I got sick over the weekend. I got diagnosed with flu. Then this happened. So along those lines, you have to remember there are all these other things that are happening, right? Like I randomly found out I was allergic to avocado a couple of years ago. And it took me a couple of months of being miserable to figure out it was the guacamole at Chipotle. So try to just pay attention to yourself. Try not to automatically just assume the worst. But I want to go back to what I said first. Pay attention to yourself. Yes, you know your body. And yes, doctors, nurses, and people like that should be listening to you. I mean, we haven't really talked about this, but I think it's important. None of these discussions would be as hard as they were if we could actually address the racism that drives so much of why we are unfairly harmed by the healthcare system. So make sure that with all these discussions, don't go to the doctor by yourself if that's possible. Go with someone else who can hear the same thing you heard, that can help you ask questions, so that you don't feel like you're getting ganged up on, and that you have someone else to be like, hey, you're not listening to me.
Well, Dr. Walker, while I've got you talking, let me ask another question for you specifically. I know our DNA from other fetuses being put into other human beings via these vaccines, sorry?
No, they are not.
Okay.
Okay, so I can start with a simple no. I can back up and tell you a little bit about how this has come up. For people who feel very strongly about abortion, there are some people who are very principled and will say, I will not use any products that involve tissue from aborted fetuses. Now, remember, that means you have to look at your cosmetics, your shampoos, your lotions, so many things that you may not automatically think of. But for some people who are that principled, they do take that precaution. In the past, they may have taken from maybe 30, 40, 50 years ago, tissue and created a cell line. Now the cell line becomes completely essentially separated from that original tissue. For some people, they see it as completely separate. For other people who are very principled, they're like, nope, I don't want any parts of it because that's where it started from originally. I'm going to make two important facts. One, the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines did not use any fetal cell lines, any fetal tissue, nothing at all. For some of the newer vaccines that are coming along, I believe it's AstraZeneca specifically, they did use some fetal tissue. Now, with all of that, there is no DNA. There's none. There's no DNA whatsoever. Now, I am a neonatologist, so I take care of tiny little babies that literally are at the edge of viability, and we are constantly pushing ourselves to try to save the smaller and sicker babies. But we recognize there are limitations because we are human. And because of that, I also have to watch babies die and deal with babies that we can't save. And that's kind of the part of my job I don't like to talk about. So people often ask, how can you do this? Well, one of the things that I take very seriously is I do believe that every life has purpose and has meaning, and that even if I can't save a baby's life, that baby has blessed me and taught me how to be a better physician going forward, and that I honor that baby's life and how it has enriched the care that we will provide to others. So when I think about fetal cell tissues, I think of it the same way, is that we have now given this life meaning and purpose, that we're able to save so many more people from sickness, suffering, and dying. And to me, for my spirituality and for my practice as a physician, it helps me understand how to grapple with those difficult issues.
Well, guys, for all of you and gals, for all of you, the sacrifice that you make in that area that you spoke to, Dr. Walker, is insurmountable. I know you deal with the patients that don't get the fact that you have to be proactive when it comes to your health. So I thank you so much for being here today. This is a step in the right direction for folks with the education of the virus and the vaccine. So again, thank you very much. Now we're going to switch gears a little bit and go into something a little more fun. We're going to play Spin the Wheel. I really hope you listened to me all those times when I told you to fill out that survey. So let's jump into it. I am going to turn it over to Karen and Pavane as they conduct our Spin the Wheel game. It's all of you ladies.
Good afternoon, and thank you for coming and participating in today's symposium. We learned a lot. I want to thank our panelists. That was interesting and educational. And now for some fun. If you have filled out the evaluation, your name and your email address is on the wheel. We're going to spin and we're going to call out your email address and you will receive a gift card. So Pavane, if you will spin for our first winner. All right. Johanna L. Thomas at yahoo.com is our first winner. You will be receiving an Amazon gift card. And let's go to number 2. Our second winner, email address JES247@gmail. Congratulations. And for our third and final spin of the day, alot221@gmail.com. Congratulations. Thank you for completing the evaluation. Thanks to all our winners, and thanks again for your participation.
Sorry, I was on mute there. Thank you so much, Ms. Karen, for that. All those winners, be sure to check your email. They won't be mailed, they will be emailed to you, and it could possibly go in your spam. So make sure you're checking that spam folder. Well, this brings my time to an end. I just want to mention that there is a final session next week, so please tune in. There's some awesome stuff that'll be playing for that one. It has been my absolute pleasure to spend this time with you all today. I'd first like to thank all of the panelists for their knowledgeable insight. You all have truly made my job very easy today. Thank you for being candid and open with us. That is so important. I'd also like to give a special thank you to Dr. Samara Bowen. Her passion for connecting our people to facts we need to remain healthy and safe are the reason that we're all here today. She definitely deserves these flowers and these kudos as we sit here today. So everyone send that her way. I'd also like to give a special thank you to the Theta Mu Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. This event has reached people all over the country. I have proof of that when we did our sound check earlier today. We were in several different time zones. So that is so beautiful. And none of this would have been possible without your hard work and your talents. Lastly, I'd like to thank the beautiful ladies of the outstanding Omicron Eta Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha in St. Louis, Missouri. To my president, Ronnie Stacker, and my vice president, Carolyn Wilson. Your leadership and sisterliness have gotten me the confidence to be here today. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Diane.
Good afternoon. While we wait for my camera to get started, the members of Theta Mu Omega chapter thank each of you for joining us today for this myth-busting, fact-seeking, truth-sharing, and relevant webinar featuring voices we can trust. Thanksgiving for our Exemplifying Excellence panelists, Drs. Deborah Smart, Mia Sanders, Celeste Williams, Matt Wooten, Nigella Sante Thomas, and Valencia Walker. We also thank our dynamic moderator, Ms. Ashley Furness. We are thankful to our organizational partners who co-produced this series: the Advancement of Blacks in Sports, the Los Angeles chapters of the Association of Black Women's Physicians, the Black Women's Lawyers Association, and the Charles R. Drew Medical Society. We're thankful to the NAACP chapters in El Paso, Texas, and St. Louis, Missouri. And in El Paso, Texas, the National Panhellenic Council, the Links Incorporated, the Top Ladies of Distinction. And we're thankful to the Untouchable Academy, which trains the next generation of barbers and stylists. Bouquets of tea roses to Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority members from Alpha Alpha Nu Omega in Round Rock, Texas, Eta Pi Omega in El Paso, Texas, Mu Beta Omega in Inglewood, California, our Omicron Eta Omega in St. Louis, Missouri, where our wonderful moderator hails from, Sigma Pi Omega in Torrance, California, and of course the Theta Mu Omega chapter in Inglewood. At this time, I would ask that you pray for the people in Texas. They're really going through it with the weather and with the energy. And so let's pray that they're safe. Please remember to complete your survey. We really do review your evaluations because we want to get better. Give everyone a round of applause, and we invite you to join us next week as we continue this discussion, vaccinating today or delay. Thank you.